Alright, Andre, so the two of us have actually had the chance to go hands-on with Luigi's Mansion 3 and play it for quite a bit. You much more so than me, as I've only started today, but I thought we'd sort of pick your brain and I could chime in where I'd actually, could, and see what we think about Luigi's third ghost hunting adventure so far. So, right off the bat, how are you feeling about it?
I think it's pretty good so far. I'm a huge Luigi's Mansion fan, obviously, especially the first one. I just thoroughly enjoyed that game. I thought it was really novel at the time. So it's pretty cool that we're finally on a third one, almost 20 years later. And yeah, it's been a pretty good time so far. I think I'm about halfway through the game because I just reached floor 9. And each floor is effectively a level. It pretty much a self-contained level almost. And yeah, I've just been, coming to grips with the controls and exploring the various floors of this hotel and playing around with Gooigi, of course, including a co-op, which has been probably some of the most fun I've had actually in the game. I've also tried the minigames. There's 3 of them, as well as the Scare Scraper, the Scare Scraper online mode. I was actually playing with Treehouse people just yesterday and got quite a few rounds in. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, you have put in a lot of time with the game. So great to hear you're still enjoying it, because I've been impressed with what I've played so far. The thing that sticks out to me, God, this game has so much personality.
It really does. The cutscenes especially are amazing. And there are a ton of them. It's almost like playing a Luigi's Mansion cartoon, and I love that. The characters are so well animated, and Next Level Games really understands I think Luigi's psyche. I don't know what it is that they understand him, but they get him, and I love it. And it's not just Luigi though. All the characters are super well animated, or even rat movements. Like when the little rats are clinging to the floor as you're trying to suck them up, is hilarious.
I mean, I got more amusement than I should have out of the fact that there was a Black Widow spider hanging from the rooftops, and I was trying to suck it up because you can get some money off of that. And it was just a little too far away for me to get it, but it was still like, you could tell that it was clenching on with its back legs trying to hang on for dear life. And just those little subtle movements in there are so great.
The presentation across the board is really well done. Like, for instance, after the opening sequence, which, oddly enough, we can't show you from the final game, even though it's the exact same as E3, so I don't get Nintendo sometimes. But after that sequence, you end up in the hotel lobby, and you can actually explore the small little area where you're interacting with Mario, Polterpup, Peach, the Toads, and it's just like a really lovely introduction to the game. And then shortly thereafter, you go up to your floor, you bid everyone else goodnight, and then you go to your bed and retire for the night, and then when you wake up, that's when everything has gone to, well, heck. And that's when you have to explore the mansion, or the hotel, I should say, and track down your friends and see what's going on in this place.
It's a pretty quick introduction. You can get to the point where you're sucking up ghosts relatively quickly, but I still found myself taking my time because I wanted to see all the animations. I was talking to each character. I was exploring every inch of Luigi's hotel room just because I wanted to see how he was going to interact with everything. And you can just find some really fun treats when you just explore and test everything and see what can happen. And I don't know, there's something just engaging about seeing what Luigi will do next.
Yeah, I mean, you were kind of touching on something there with the interaction, and it seems like everything is interactive in this game. I think far more than any other Luigi's Mansion game. Like, everything like spits out coins, or reacts to your vacuum, or your dark light, or your plunger in some way. And to the point where, like, I was playing with my friend in co-op, and it took us like a few minutes to clear out every one of these rooms, because there was, in fact, I'd say clear out loosely, but there's still probably crap in there we missed. It is nuts just how much you can do in each room. And that's partly because there's more ways than ever to interact with things, such as how you can now use a plunger to latch onto things and either tear them apart or swing them around and break them in some other way. And yeah, it's just really neat, like, what all you can do.
Yeah, it's amazing how much you can suck up, because this vacuum seems super powered compared to what we've seen in the past, because just every loose object is, if it moves, it can usually get sucked up by your vacuum.
Yeah, pretty much.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Like, just endless towels and all this stuff, and I just find myself wanting to suck up it all, because, as you said, money can come out of anywhere and everywhere. And I mean, I'm only maybe 2.5 hours into the game, and I probably have close to 10,000 coins.
Yeah, well, we should probably talk about what you use those coins for in this game, and that is after you find Professor e.gadd, he opens up like a mobile lab in which you can return to at pretty much any point in the game, and you can purchase, at least as far as I know, up to 3 or 1 to 3 different items. You can buy the Golden Bones, which allows Polterpup to bring you back from the dead if you happen to die, even though that hasn't happened to me yet. Or you can buy a boo tracker, which allows you to track down or help you track down the boos hidden on each floor of the mansion. A little bit like the original Luigi's Mansion, except on a per room basis and on a per floor basis. And then finally, there is a gem tracker as well, which will help you track down the gems. And I believe how those latter two work is that your controller will shake whenever you're near a secret, and the closer you are, the more it'll vibrate. So I used it recently to track down one of the boos, and my controller started vibrating heavily as it got closer to a couch, and just started sucking it up as when the boo exposed himself.
I haven't even reached that point yet where I could actually spend that money, so it's cool that you can get those different items to help you along. And despite that, I don't know if I actually want the gem tracker, because the puzzle of actually figuring out how to get each of the gems is kind of a lot of fun.
Yeah, we say that now. Wait till you're on the last one on each floor, and
well, I guess that's true. It's
we'll
like, how the heck do I get this?
Yeah, especially when you don't know what room it's in, because you can't always see them. Sometimes you have no idea where they're hidden.
Yeah, they can get very devious, and a lot of times they'll like tease like, hey, here's this room that's off to the side, and you got to figure out how to get to it, and it's tricky in some points. Like, I had to think about it, and you have to really use all of your abilities in order to do it, because I'm still early on, so it's like, oh right, plunger, I should probably try that out. Okay, that worked. Oh, the plunger didn't work. Dark light, does that work? No? Okay, there must be something else I can do later on, so I'll note it for later.
That's the interesting thing. I found myself forgetting all the abilities I have, because he has so many this time. Luigi can hop in place, by pressing both suck and blow at the same time. Well, I don't know if that's their proper names, but...
that's pretty appropriate for Luigi.
It does. It also blows off. It also blows back nearby enemies. On top of that, you have the dark light, which reveals invisible objects. You have Gooigi, which can he can go through all manner of things and allow you to explore areas you couldn't normally reach, and you'll be using him a lot. You can also use him to combine your suck power, among many other things. And then of course you have the plunger you mentioned as well, and that has all kinds of interactions. On top of everything I just mentioned. So yeah, and oftentimes you have to mix and match those. So I've often reached a point where I'm like, I have no idea how the heck to grab that thing, and then eventually I'll remember. I'm like, oh right, I have this ability I haven't used in a little bit. Maybe I should try it. And sure enough, it's almost always how you solve the puzzle. But that's also another point I want to touch on, is there are a lot of puzzles in this game, as you might expect from a Luigi's Mansion game. And there have been a couple that have really kind of racked my brain so far. I think the floor I just finished, which is actually the very extent I can talk about in this preview embargo, is the 8th floor, being Paranormal Productions. And I think Nintendo already showed this off to some degree at E3, so I won't dive in too much, especially because I don't want to spoil some aspects that I think may not have been shown off yet. But it's just a really freaking cool floor, where the whole idea is it's taking place on basically a soundstage, or multiple sound stages, and each soundstage has a camera, and when you look through the camera as Luigi, it takes the set and brings it to life, with the blue screen in the background, adding elements that you can only see through the camera. And then you have to use Gooigi to actually interact with that virtual setting, and it is super neat. So it has this really neat interplay between the virtual world, or the cinematography world, I guess, and the real world, and the puzzles are all built around the mechanic, and it is freaking awesome. I think that's a point that's really, I think the game now is reaching a point where I'm starting to enjoy it more than I was up until then.
It's interesting you note that, because I'm still very early in, as I mentioned, but the puzzles are definitely gratifying. The animations are a lot of fun, of course, but the combat so far has seemed kind of basic. Now, granted, I have not fought a lot of ghosts so far. It's all been very basic encounters, but while I enjoyed the slam move in our playtime at E3, now I'm wondering if it's almost too powerful.
Yeah, that's the exact issue I'm running into. The combat at this point in the game seems to be a weak spot, and that's a bit of a bummer, because there's a lot of combat in the Luigi Mansion games. What it comes down to is basically just inhaling a ghost long enough. There we go, that's much better sounding than suck. Is inhaling a ghost long enough to the point that you can press A to activate the slam, and then you can just do a slam. I think it's almost always 4 times in a row, which if it doesn't kill a ghost, it'll get it pretty close, get it close enough that you can kill it on the next round. And even when you're slamming a ghost, you can then use that slam to slam other ghosts, and then make it so you can suck them up easily on once you're done with the first one.
Chain it together as well. Like you finish that ghost, and if you slam the previous ghost, they're weakened, and you can just immediately suck them up and continue the process. So it's really easy to just go through an entire group, even if you didn't use the flashlight on all of them to stun them at the same time.
They don't stand a ghost of a chance against the slam move. Yeah, so it's a little bit disappointing because you're right. In early previews, and even the early half an hour of the game or so, like it seems like a really awesome move. But then you're like, oh, there's not much strategy to it. I just pound things or slam a bunch of things, and that's it. Like it feels like it's kind of removed the skill from capturing ghosts. Like whereas in the original Luigi's Mansion, it felt very much like this tug of war, like a fishing game. Now it's more like you just need to inhale them long enough for like a few seconds to get the slam, and then it's kind of game over for them. So maybe it'll get more, maybe it'll continue to get progressively more challenging and involved as the game goes on. But I'm halfway through, I think, or around there, and it hasn't really been much of a challenge yet. Like I haven't even died once in the game. I've only gone low in health, I think, a time or two. So yeah, that's my key concern to this point. But on the other hand, I will say a highlight of the combat has been the boss ghosts, of which I think there's basically one per floor. So these are almost, I would say, the portrait ghosts of this game. They're not quite portrait ghosts, for better or worse. They're less puzzle focused, but they're definitely lean more into the boss side of things, to the extent that I think once you engage one, you basically can't escape. So these really are more boss type characters. But given the fact that there's almost as many of them as there are portrait ghosts, that's pretty impressive. And each one is super unique, or unique at the least, and has been fun so far. There have been a few standouts I've encountered, such as one. Actually, I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, they've all been pretty cool so far for the most part, I'd say.
Yeah, and I've only encountered the really basic ones. But for example, again, just forgetting abilities at times, there was the one maid that you needed to stun, and I was like, I stunned her, but I can't suck her up. Why can't I suck her up? What do I have to do? And e.gadd popped up and basically told me. So
right.
Does he do that a lot, like later on? Because I was taking my time exploring some rooms before I needed to go to my objective, and he basically called me up and was like, "Hey, hurry up! You should probably go to my room. Go do that."
Yeah, it does seem like he can be a bit impatient at times, where he'll just tell you what to do. Luckily, it's not too often, because I was afraid of that too. Like if he's just gonna pop up constantly. But for the most part, it hasn't been too invasive. And I believe there is an option to disable his hints too. So if you want a more purist experience, I believe you can get that.
But I was actually really impressed with the Gooigi tutorial, because they don't like, hey, here's the basics of Gooigi. Go rescue yourself. And then, I'm heading towards it, and I forgot about the water, and walked into the water, dissolved. He's like, oh, by the way, you should watch out for water, because Gooigi dissolves in that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Not introducing things until you make that mistake.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really clever. I love that.
It's super clever. Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I started playing co-op with one of my friends shortly after getting Gooigi, and the whole floor that you really need Gooigi for kind of acts as an elaborate tutorial, to the point where it may not have been the best place to play co-op, because a lot of it was just dedicated to Gooigi, where I could only watch from the sidelines as Gooigi was taking care of everything. But that aside, again, as I said earlier, I had a lot of fun with co-op. Because you can team up to take down ghosts. Some ghosts in particular are kind of built with two people in mind, specifically those giant red brick-looking ones. And then it's just fun to tear apart rooms as you're working together to go through them. So yeah, this game definitely takes more advantage of co-op than Luigi's Mansion did on 3DS. Whereas in that game it felt like it was tacked on. It definitely feels like they planned it in mind for this game. It's not essential, but I would recommend playing co-op if you can.
Yeah, so what about these extra modes beyond the main game?
There are 2 multiplayer modes in the game beyond co-op, and that is there are 3 minigames, which are local only. You can only play them together locally. And then there's also a online mode called Scare Scraper, which is basically the same mode from the DS, only now online and with Gooigi and a few other new factors. So let's go and talk about the minigames first. There are 3 of them. One's Ghost Hunt, in which I should mention that in all 3 of these, you can play with up to 8 people locally. And in the first one, you're in a graveyard just hunting down ghosts. Nothing too exciting. In Coin Float, you're basically all in these little inner tubes in a pool, and your goal is to get coins while avoiding bombs. If you get by a bomb, you drop all of your coins, just leaving it to your opponents to grab them. And then finally, Cannon Barrage, which might be the best one of the three, is one in which you have to grab cannonballs, load them into a cannon, and then fire the cannon at targets. So you have to time it properly to try and hit the highest scoring targets. So that one seemed like it might be the most fun with a bunch of people, because you have to work together as teams, and it does require some coordination, and you can kind of screw with the other team too by stealing their cannonballs. But the other two felt completely throwaway. Now I should mention I only played with 2 people, so maybe they're more fun with even more beyond that. But basically, if I have 8 people over, I'm not going to be playing Luigi's Mansion 3, I'm pretty sure. So
yeah, because it's also the type of game that you just can't pick up and play, because I'm still kind of adjusting to positioning Luigi for his vacuum, which, I went through the same learning curve with the original Luigi's Mansion.
Right. Yeah, good point. The controls are a little bit more involved than the standard like Mario Party game. However, moving on to Scare Scraper, though, this mode is online for up to 4 people at a time. Although if you play with co-op, with a co-op partner locally, that expands to 8 because you have Gooigi here as well. And like in Dark Moon, the goal is still to go floor to floor, clearing out each floor of all the ghosts. Although there are different objectives this time. Some of them is like collect a set amount of money, or in another you have to find like 4 toads hidden somewhere on the mansion or somewhere around the mansion. And the cool thing with them is when you find a room with a toad, that toad is scared by the ghosts. So you have to clear out that room of the ghosts before you can take the toad back to the central point to continue on. There's a few power-ups here. I can't remember them all, but like one of them is where Luigi wears these cool shades and allows him to see all the invisible objects instantly, so you don't have to use your dark light to find them all. But yeah, I mean, on the whole, like, it's basically like Dark Moon's multiplayer. I had fun with it. I don't know how much fun or how much I'll go back to this mode as well, but it was fun to try and go through floor to floor and reach the top of the Scare Scraper, at which point there is a boss battle. I think we fought Bulasis in the 2 or 3 times we reached the top. And yeah, it was enjoyable. The online worked well to the extent that I didn't notice any major lag or anything. And you do have like 3 simple voice commands you can send, or 3 simple messages you can send to your teammates being like, hey, I need help, or come over here, or thank you. I wish there were a few more than that. There are a couple of traps in the game where you can either get like caught in a rug that like wraps up around you, or you get slammed by a door. And in both those cases, you basically can't escape unless a teammate helps you. And you're playing with complete jerks, and it seemed like I was. Some of these treehouse people, I don't know what their deal is, but they weren't rescuing me. So I was stuck there for like what felt like an eternity, which is probably 2 or 3 minutes, in which I couldn't move at all. Eventually, the game finally did let me free, but it really, I mean, I was surprised it did. But it was at the point where I was sure I wasn't going to escape from this thing, because it was taking so freaking long. But yeah, you are able to send out a help message at least, but like I said, it didn't seem to do a whole lot of good then. That aside though, I had some fun. It was at its most fun when it came down to the wire, and we had literally 1 second left. I think it was maybe less than a second, and we cleared out the final ghost just in time. That was kind of amazing. So yeah,
oh my God.
So yeah, I'll have to play a little bit more to see whether or not I'll return to it.
Is there anything else that stood out about Luigi's Mansion 3 so far from your playtime?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I love the Virtual Boo. That replaces the Game Boy Horror from the first game. Now Luigi uses a Virtual Boy on his face, which is just really funny. e.gadd is lip syncing, which is a little bit disturbing. But he still uses the same voice samples from the GameCube version, but now his mouth actually forms the actual pronunciation, and it's weird, but I kind of like it too. The graphics are great across the board. The lighting effects are really good. The animation's fantastic. The frame rate's pretty solid at 30 frames per second. I think I've noticed some slowdown here and there, but nothing too bad. And then you also have an on-screen map now, which, by the way, you can enlarge at any time by pressing up on the D-pad to expand it and overlay the screen with it. Yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else. I guess the only other concern, or maybe not concern, but thing that maybe surprised me or took me back a little bit, is that this game is more linear than I expected. I was hoping there'd be more interplay between the floors, but up to this point, it's been pretty much like these are levels. Like, you go from one level to the next. I mean, well, I guess they are literally levels too. Yeah. But you know what I mean, in the game sense as well. Like, you go from one to the next, and then, at the end of each one, you typically find an elevator button to take you to another floor. And while there has been, I think, a time or two where you've had some leeway which floor you explore next, again, each floor is pretty self-contained. So they kind of feel a little bit like the mansions from Dark Moon in that they are self-contained as opposed to being interconnected. Maybe that'll come into play more later on. I do like that you can pop between the floors as you want, if you want to go back and look for a boo or gems. But aside from that, there's not a whole lot of reason to go back in my experience. So take that for what you will. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
All right. I think that covers it for our Luigi's Mansion 3 preview. So thank you for watching. And if you like this video, be sure to like us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain. And of course, be sure to subscribe to GameXplain for more on Luigi and other things gaming as well. Until next time. Bye.